My vintage camper, a beautiful relic from the 1970s, sat proudly in my driveway, a testament to my late uncle's love for the open road. Little did I know, this symbol of freedom would ignite a neighborhood feud, turning my quiet suburban life into a battleground against the most unlikely of foes, the self-appointed queen of conformity herself, HOA treasurer. What started as a simple restoration project quickly escalated into a full-blown war, with my opponent unleashing daily fines and snide remarks, utterly convinced my dream was nothing more than an eyesore. But I had a secret weapon, a plan to transform that humble camper into something so unexpectedly luxurious, so outrageously popular, it would not only silence her criticisms, but completely overshadow her own beloved business. Trust me, you won't believe how this turned out. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The old Shasta camper, a faded emerald green with white stripes, was more than just a vehicle. It was a time capsule, a rolling repository of memories from my Uncle Jim. He had bequeathed it to me in his will, along with a cryptic note that simply read, "Find your freedom, Tyler." At 30 years old, stuck in a soul-crumbing desk job and a rented apartment that felt more like a cage, that camper represented a tangible step towards something different. My plan was simple: restore it, travel, maybe even live in it for a while. The first step, however, was getting it to my recently purchased, modest suburban home, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac that until now had seemed utterly unremarkable. The day the tow truck dropped off the camper, a hulking, somewhat dilapidated presence on my pristine concrete driveway, was the day my quiet life ended. I was inside, excitedly pulling out old tarps and a toolbox, when a sharp rap echoed on my front door. Standing on my porch, with a posture so rigid she could have been carved from granite, was Karen Alston. Her perfectly coiffed blonde bob seemed to vibrate with indignation, and her eyes, a frosty blue, fixed on the camper with a gaze usually reserved for stray animals or unkempt weeds. "Mr. Monroe," she announced, her voice a brittle chirp that grated on my nerves. "I am Karen Alston, treasurer of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." She didn't offer a hand, nor a smile. "And I must say, that thing in your driveway is a blatant violation of our community's aesthetic guidelines." I blinked, genuinely surprised. "It's a camper, Ms. Alston, my late uncle's. I'm going to restore it." Her lips, thin and bloodless, pursed into a tight line. "Restore it or not, Mr. Monroe, it is an eyesore. It brings down property values. Our covenants clearly state that no recreational vehicles are to be permanently parked in driveways. This is a respectable P.S. neighborhood, not a junkyard." Her emphasis on respectable felt like a thinly veiled insult, aimed squarely at me and my apparent lack of suburban decorum. I knew she also ran the Whispering Pines bed and breakfast a few blocks over, a quaint but somewhat stuffy establishment that catered to what she probably considered the right kind of clientele. The thought briefly crossed my mind that she saw the camper as some kind of rival, but I quickly dismissed it. Who competes with a derelict 1970s RV? "It won't be permanent," I tried to explain, my patience already wearing thin. "Just for a few weeks while I work on it. Then it'll be moved." Karen, however, seemed to have already reached her verdict. "Consider this your first warning, Mr. Monroe. If it is not removed within 24 hours, you will begin accruing daily fines. Good day." And with that, she turned on her heel and marched off, her sensible heels clicking defiantly on the pavement. I stood there, mouth agape, watching her perfectly tailored suit disappear around the corner. An eyesore? My uncle's camper, which held so much promise and sentimental value, was an eyesore? The audacity of it stung. But I was not one to back down, especially not when someone tried to dictate what I could and couldn't do on my own property, within reasonable bounds, of course. This, I felt, was entirely unreasonable. The next day, a crisp, official-looking letter arrived in my mailbox, emblazoned with the HOA logo. It detailed a $50 a day fine for aesthetic noncompliance and unapproved vehicle parking. $50 a day! That was $250 a week, $1,000 a month. This wasn't just a warning. It was an attempt to strong-arm me into submission. My frustration simmered, slowly bubbling into a quiet defiance. Karen Alston clearly underestimated my stubborn streak. I spent the next few days in a haze of work and simmering resentment. I started by clearing out the camper's musty interior, pulling up the ancient, stained carpeting, and tearing down the faded, peeling wallpaper. The more I worked, the more I imagined Karen's frosty blue eyes scanning my driveway, her mental ledger ticking up the fines. And the more I imagined it, the more a wild idea began to take root in my mind. What if I didn't just restore the camper? What if I transformed it? What if I made it something so undeniably beautiful, so undeniably desirable, that even Karen Alston would have to eat her perfectly coiffed words? The idea of a luxury Airbnb right here in my driveway began to solidify. It was audacious, perhaps a little crazy, but it was also the perfect revenge. It would be a direct challenge to her definition of respectable and a very public testament to the potential she so readily dismissed. I dove into research, spending my evenings poring over online listings for tiny homes and unique stays. I devoured articles on interior design for small spaces, watched countless DIY videos, and scoured architectural salvage websites for unique touches. My vision began to crystallize, a blend of modern minimalist design with touches of vintage charm, creating a cozy yet elegant retreat. I pictured sleek lines, warm lighting, plush textiles, and smart technology. It would be a world away from the musty, outdated interior it currently possessed. The first step was gutting the interior completely. I hauled out rotten wood, stripped down crumbling insulation, and tore out antiquated wiring. It was dirty, back-breaking work, and I often found myself covered in grime, looking every bit the junkyard resident Karen had accused me of being. Each find that arrived in the mail, delivered with a smug satisfaction I could practically feel emanating from the envelope, only fueled my determination. I would prove her wrong. Not just to spite her, but to prove to myself that I could create something truly special, something that would resonate with Uncle Jim's spirit of unconventional freedom. My budget was tight, but I was resourceful. I frequented salvage yards, scored incredible deals on reclaimed wood, and learned to haggle like a pro at local hardware stores. I spent hours teaching myself basic carpentry, plumbing, and electrical work through online tutorials, making mistakes, learning from them, and pushing forward. The camper became my sanctuary, my obsession, my creative outlet. I started to see it not as a project, but as a blank canvas, waiting for me to infuse it with life. The exterior was the first major transformation. I carefully stripped away the old, faded paint, revealing the surprisingly solid aluminum shell beneath. I decided against the original emerald green, opting instead for a sophisticated charcoal gray with crisp white trim, giving it a modern yet classic feel. I polished the chrome accents until they gleamed, reflecting the sunlight like jewels. The vintage Shasta-winged logo, which I'd painstakingly restored, became a proud emblem of its heritage. It was starting to look less like an eyesore and more like a work of art. Karen, of course, noticed the transformation. I'd catch her pausing during her morning power walks, her head tilted, a look of perplexed annoyance on her face. The daily fines continued, a relentless assault on my mailbox, but her notes became slightly less venomous, more bewildered. She couldn't quite grasp what I was doing, and that, in itself, was a small victory. Inside, the transformation was even more dramatic. I installed new insulation, ensuring it would be cozy in winter and cool in summer. I laid down sleek, light-colored laminate flooring, giving the small space an illusion of expansive airiness. The walls were painted a soft, calming off-white, providing a neutral backdrop for the vibrant accents I planned. For the kitchen area, I designed a compact but highly functional space. I found a miniature refrigerator, a tiny 2-burner induction cooktop, and a sleek, stainless steel sink that fit perfectly into a custom-built countertop crafted from a beautiful piece of salvage butcher block. Floating shelves above offered space for minimalist dishware and a few decorative plants, adding a touch of natural beauty. The sleeping area was designed for ultimate comfort. I built a custom platform bed that perfectly fit a queen-sized memory foam mattress, promising a luxurious night's sleep. Soft, recessed LED lighting provided a warm glow, and blackout blinds ensured privacy and darkness. I envisioned guests waking up feeling refreshed and pampered, ready to explore the local attractions. The bathroom, arguably the most challenging part of the renovation, was also a triumph of compact design. I managed to squeeze in a small composting toilet, a surprisingly elegant vessel sink on a floating vanity, and a compact but functional shower with a rain shower head. High-quality fixtures and subway tiles made the tiny space feel surprisingly chic. Technology was key to the luxury aspect of my Airbnb vision. I installed a smart thermostat, a high-speed Wi-Fi router, and a flat-screen TV that swung out from the wall. USB charging ports were discreetly placed throughout, catering to the modern traveler. I even added a small portable projector and screen for cozy movie nights. As the weeks turned into months, the camper slowly but surely shed its old skin and emerged as something truly remarkable. It was no longer just a camper, it was the nomad's nest, a bespoke retreat on wheels, lovingly crafted and meticulously designed. The total cost of the renovation, thanks to my careful budgeting and DIY skills, came in at just under $12,000, a fraction of what a professional renovation would have cost. Finally, the day arrived. The nomad's nest was complete. I styled it with plush throws, soft pillows, and carefully chosen artwork. A small, inviting welcome basket sat on the counter, filled with local treats and a handwritten note. I took dozens of photos, capturing every angle of its newfound elegance, the warm glow of the interior, the inviting outdoor seating area I had created with string lights and comfortable chairs. Listing it on Airbnb was surprisingly easy. I set a competitive price, slightly higher than standard hotel rooms in the area, but significantly less than upscale boutique hotels like Karen's Whispering Pines. My description highlighted its unique charm, its modern amenities, and its peaceful location. I held my breath and clicked publish. The first booking came within hours. Then another. And another. Within days, the nomad's nest was booked solid for the next month. The reviews started pouring in almost immediately. 5 stars. Glowing testimonials about the charming, cozy, and surprisingly luxurious experience. Guests raved about the attention to detail, the comfortable bed, the excellent Wi-Fi, and the peaceful private setting. They loved the novelty of staying in a camper that felt more like a chic tiny home. "A hidden gem," one review gushed. "Better than any hotel stay. Highly recommend." "Who knew a camper could be this amazing?" another wrote. "Every detail thought of. We'll definitely be back." I watched, fascinated, as the nomad's nest's online ranking climbed steadily, day by day. It wasn't long before it surpassed Karen's Whispering Pines bed and breakfast. My little camper, the Eyesore she had so vehemently condemned, was now outperforming her meticulously managed, presumably high-end establishment. The irony was almost too sweet to bear. I still received the HOA fines, but they felt less impactful now, almost like a badge of honor. I continued to pay them, of course, sending a check with each new letter, a silent testament to my continued defiance and success. The fines were a nuisance, but they were a small price to pay for the satisfaction of watching my vision flourish, and perhaps for the knowledge that Karen was undoubtedly fuming. And fume she did. I saw her more often now, sometimes walking past my driveway, her pace slowing to an almost imperceptible crawl as she peered at the camper, a look of incredulity etched on her face. Her perfectly manicured hand would occasionally twitch, as if she wanted to march over and demand an explanation, but the constant stream of different cars, the cheerful greetings from my guests, and the undeniable aura of success emanating from the nomad's nest seemed to hold her back. Then came the ultimate validation, and the most delicious twist of all. I received a booking request from someone named Brenda Alston. The name immediately caught my attention. Could it be? I cross-referenced the last name with the HOA directory. Sure enough, there was a Brenda Alston listed as Karen's sister-in-law, residing in a neighboring town. My heart did a little triumphant leap. This was going to be good. Brenda arrived on a Friday afternoon, a woman in her late 50s, with a kind smile and eyes that held a familiar, mischievous twinkle. She greeted me warmly, completely unlike her sister-in-law. "So, you're the infamous Tyler Monroe," she said, a playful glint in her eyes as she surveyed the nomad's nest. Karen has been absolutely beside herself about this place. She calls it that monstrosity on Monroe's driveway every time she talks about it. Brenda chuckled, a genuine hearty sound. When I saw the listing and those reviews, I just had to see what all the fuss was about. And honestly, I also wanted to wind Karen up a bit. She can be quite rigid. I couldn't help but grin. "Well, Brenda, welcome to the monstrosity. I hope you enjoy your stay." Brenda's review, left after her 2-night stay, was even better than I could have hoped for. It was 5 stars, of course, filled with effusive praise for the surprisingly spacious, impeccably decorated, and incredibly peaceful retreat. But it was the final line that truly resonated. "My sister-in-law despises this place, but honestly, it's a gem. Best stay I've had in years. She really doesn't know what she's missing." That review, coupled with the nomad's nest consistently outranking Whispering Pines, became the talk of the neighborhood, and then, slowly, the talk of the local community. People started driving by my house just to catch a glimpse of the luxury camper. Local news outlets even picked up on the story, running segments on the Airbnb that defied the HOA and interviewing me about my entrepreneurial spirit. I, of course, was always polite and unassuming in interviews, focusing on my passion for renovation and providing unique travel experiences. I never once mentioned Karen by name, but the subtext was always there, clear as day to anyone in Willow Creek. The Eyesore had become a local attraction, a symbol of creative defiance and unexpected success. Karen Alston, meanwhile, was left with nothing but her daily fines, which I continued to pay promptly, and the bitter taste of defeat. She couldn't issue fines for a legally operating business, especially one that was generating such positive publicity for the neighborhood, even if it was through her own twisted efforts. Her attempts to use the HOA to enforce her narrow vision of suburban perfection had backfired spectacularly, turning her into the unwitting antagonist in a heartwarming, highly publicized local success story. The Whispering Pines bed and breakfast, once her pride and joy, now seemed to pale in comparison. Its reviews, while respectable, lacked the enthusiastic glow of the nomad's nest. Karen's carefully constructed world of control and impeccable appearances was being slowly but surely dismantled by a vintage camper and the quiet determination of its owner. I continued to expand the nomad's nest, adding a small, discreet fire pit area and enhancing the landscaping around the driveway to create an even more inviting outdoor space. I received inquiries from other towns, even other states, asking for advice on how to convert their own campers into similar ventures. My little side project had blossomed into something much larger than I had ever anticipated. It wasn't just a business. It was a movement, a quiet rebellion against rigid conformity, a celebration of individuality and ingenuity. The success of the Nomad's Nest continued to climb, attracting guests from far beyond the local area. Its reputation as a quirky, luxurious, and highly sought-after stay grew organically, driven by word of mouth and the ever-present 5-star reviews. I started receiving emails from travel bloggers and social media influencers, eager to feature my unique Airbnb. One popular travel channel even reached out, wanting to do a full segment on the transformation and its unexpected success. I agreed, cautiously excited about the increased exposure. The day the film crew arrived, my quiet suburban street was abuzz with activity. Cameras rolled, drones buzzed overhead, and a cheerful host interviewed me about my journey. I walked them through every detail of the renovation, from the initial gutting to the final decorative touches. I spoke about my Uncle Jim and his legacy of freedom, about the joy of creating something with my own hands, and about the unexpected community I had found through this project. Of course, the unspoken narrative of the HOA battle loomed in the background, adding an irresistible layer of drama to the story. Karen, naturally, was aware of the commotion. I saw her peering from behind her meticulously trimmed hedges, her expression a mix of fury and bewildered fascination. She was probably internally calculating the number of fines she wished she could issue for excessive media presence or unauthorized drone usage. But she remained silent, trapped by the public spectacle of my success. The more I flourished, the more her power waned. The travel segment aired a few weeks later, turning the Nomad's Nest into a national sensation. Bookings surged, extending months into the future. I had to hire a part-time assistant to manage the inquiries and turnover, a young, enthusiastic college student named Leo, who shared my appreciation for unique projects and my quiet amusement at the neighborhood drama. Leo quickly picked up the ropes, handling guest communications and ensuring the camper was always pristine for new arrivals. He even started a small social media campaign for the Nomad's Nest, further boosting its online presence and appealing to a younger demographic. With the increased income, I was able to pay off my remaining mortgage much faster than anticipated. The daily HOA fines, which had once felt like a punitive burden, now seemed almost insignificant, a laughable footnote in my journey to financial independence. I continued to pay them promptly, a quiet assertion of my continued victory. One afternoon, a few months after the travel segment aired, I was outside polishing the camper's gleaming exterior when Karen Alston herself approached. She didn't have the usual crisp, official letter in her hand. Her shoulders seemed less rigid, her usually unyielding posture slightly slumped. There was a weariness in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "Mr. Monroe," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, devoid of its usual brittle edge. "May I have a word?" I straightened up, my rag still in hand. This was new. "Of course, Ms. Alston." She fidgeted with the strap of her handbag, a rare display of nervousness. I'd been thinking," she began, her gaze fixed on the polished chrome of the camper. This Airbnb. It has become quite the attraction." I waited, saying nothing, allowing her to navigate her own discomfort. She finally looked at me, her frosty blue eyes holding a flicker of something akin to grudging respect. "My numbers at Whispering Pines have taken a hit, a significant one. People are interested in something different, it seems." She paused, a sigh escaping her lips. "I have to admit, your ingenuity is impressive, even if I don't personally care for the aesthetics of a camper in a driveway." The last part was delivered with a faint return of her usual sniffiness, but it was muted, almost an afterthought. "I'm sorry to hear about your business, Ms. Alston," I said, genuinely. though a small part of me savored the acknowledgement of my success. She waved a dismissive hand. It's not just that. The HOA, the board, is growing weary of the constant fines, the legal fees, and the residents of many of them are quite proud of the nomad's nest. They see it as a feather in the neighborhood's cap, bringing in visitors and, dare I say, adding a certain charm. The word charm seemed to taste sour on her tongue, but she forced it out. So, what does this mean, Ms. Alston? I asked, anticipating her next move. She took a deep breath, as if bracing herself. It means the board is proposing a new amendment to the covenants, one that would allow for unique, well-maintained, short-term rental properties, provided they meet certain aesthetic standards. She looked at the gleaming camper, a flicker of something almost like admiration in her eyes. Properties like yours, Mr. Monroe. The fines, they will stop. I stared at her, utterly floored. This was it. The white flag. Not just a surrender, but a complete reversal. Karen Alston, the quintessential HOA Karen, was admitting defeat, and in doing so was changing the very rules she had so fiercely upheld. Thank you, Ms. Alston, I said genuinely. The victory felt less about rubbing it in her face and more about the simple satisfaction of having proven my point, not just to her, but to myself. She nodded curtly, then turned to leave. As she walked away, I noticed a subtle lightness in her step, as if a great burden had been lifted. Perhaps, in her own way, she too had found a form of freedom from her rigid adherence to rules and appearances. The nomad's nest continued to thrive, but it was no longer just about defying Karen. It had become a symbol of what could be achieved when one refused to be limited by others' perceptions. It had allowed me to truly embrace Uncle Jim's legacy, to find my own kind of freedom, not on the open road just yet, but in the heart of my own driveway, in a vintage camper that had become a beacon of unexpected luxury and a testament to the power of creative resilience. And for that, I was eternally grateful. The years that followed Karen Alston's reluctant surrender brought an unexpected sense of community to Willow Creek. The nomad's nest, once a point of contention, now served as a quirky landmark, a point of pride for residents who enjoyed its unique story. I found myself engaging more with my neighbors, not just in polite waves, but in genuine conversations about local events, shared garden tips, and even, occasionally, about the joys and challenges of entrepreneurship. The fines had ceased completely, and the new HOA amendment allowing for unique, well-maintained, short-term rental properties became a model for other communities struggling with similar tensions. My friendship with Leo, my assistant, deepened into a valuable partnership. His youthful energy and social media savvy perfectly complemented my hands-on renovation skills and growing business acumen. Together, we explored the idea of expanding the Nomad's Nest brand, perhaps by acquiring and renovating other vintage campers or even tiny homes in different scenic locations. The possibilities seemed endless, a far cry from the stifling routine of my old desk job. Karen, surprisingly, underwent her own transformation. The public acknowledgement of her defeat, while initially painful, seemed to have liberated her from the crushing weight of maintaining an impossible ideal. I'd occasionally see her at local coffee shops, chatting with neighbors, her expression softer, less strained. Her Whispering Pines bed and breakfast, while still operating, began to find its own niche, focusing on longer-term stays for visiting professionals, a less competitive market than the short-term vacation rentals. One brisk autumn day, I even saw her admiring the vibrant fall foliage around the Nomad's Nest, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, and in the quiet world of Willow Creek, that was more than enough. The true legacy of the Nomad's Nest, however, wasn't just about financial success or a quirky local attraction. It was about challenging perceptions, about the power of an individual to stand firm against unreasonable pressure, and about the unexpected beauty that could emerge from conflict. It was a testament to my Uncle Jim's spirit of freedom, a spirit that had found its unexpected home not on the open road, but right there in my driveway, transforming an Eyesore into a thriving emblem of ingenuity and independence. Looking back, the battle with Karen Alston wasn't just about a camper. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, about defining what respectable truly meant on my own terms. It had forced me to step out of my comfort zone, to learn new skills, and to embrace a path I never would have considered. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who had sought to control and diminish me had inadvertently pushed me towards my greatest success. My life had blossomed in ways I couldn't have imagined, all thanks to a vintage camper and an HOA Karen who called it an eyesore. It was a reminder that sometimes the biggest obstacles are simply opportunities in disguise, waiting for you to turn them into something truly extraordinary. And in my case, that extraordinary thing came with 5-star reviews and a healthy dose of satisfaction. The success of the Nomad's Nest had ripple effects beyond my immediate neighborhood. Inspired by my story, several other communities in the greater metropolitan area began to reevaluate their own restrictive HOA covenants regarding unique property uses. I was invited to speak at local community meetings, sharing my experience and offering practical advice on how to foster innovation and entrepreneurship within residential areas. It was a surprising, yet fulfilling turn of events for someone who had once felt suffocated by corporate bureaucracy. My commitment to Uncle Jim's legacy deepened further. I started a small foundation, aptly named Jim's Freedom Fund, dedicated to providing grants and mentorship to individuals looking to transform unconventional spaces into unique living or rental units. The first recipient was a young artist who wanted to convert an old shipping container into a live work studio in a revitalized urban district. It was incredibly rewarding to see the spark of creative freedom ignite in others, just as it had in me. The Nomad's Nest itself continued to thrive, consistently booked solid, a testament to its enduring appeal. I made subtle upgrades over the years, integrating more sustainable features like solar panels and a rainwater harvesting system, aligning the camper's spirit with a deeper commitment to environmental responsibility. Each improvement was a labor of love, a further refinement of the vision that had been born out of defiance. My relationship with Karen Alston settled into a curious, unspoken truce. We would nod politely when we passed each other, sometimes exchanging a brief, civil greeting. There was a newfound respect, a grudging acknowledgement of each other's perseverance, even if our approaches remained fundamentally different. I even heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she occasionally mentioned the Nomad's Nest to her hotel guests, albeit with a slightly bewildered tone, as a local point of interest. It was far from an endorsement, but it was a quiet acceptance. One unusually warm late autumn afternoon, as I was tending to the last of the fall landscaping around the camper, I saw Karen approaching my driveway. This time, she wasn't carrying a letter or a stern expression. She had a small wrapped package in her hand. My eyebrows raised in surprise. "Mr. Monroe," she said, her voice a little softer than usual. "I was cleaning out some old boxes and I found this. It belonged to my brother, your Uncle Jim. He mentioned you once, years ago, said you were interested in his old camping gear." She handed me a small, leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth with age. My uncle's distinct handwriting was visible on the first page. It was a log of his travels in the Shasta camper, filled with anecdotes, sketches of landscapes, and philosophical musings on freedom and finding joy in the simple things. "He was a good man," Karen added, her gaze softening as she looked at the camper, now gleaming under the afternoon sun. "Very different from most in this neighborhood. He would have been proud of what you've done with this place." My throat tightened. This was more than an olive branch. It was a genuine gesture of understanding, a bridge built over years of conflict. "Thank you, Karen. I said, genuinely moved. "This means a lot." She gave a small, almost shy smile. Perhaps, I misjudged things, Mr. Monroe. Sometimes, what looks like an eyesore can truly be something quite remarkable." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me with my uncle's journal and a profound sense of closure. The battle was truly over, replaced by a quiet, shared respect. My vintage camper, once a symbol of defiance, now stood as a testament to transformation, not just of a vehicle, but of a neighborhood, of a perception, and ultimately of a life. It was a journey I wouldn't trade for anything, a story etched in 5-star reviews and the quiet understanding between two unlikely neighbors.